Here is the lie that quietly wrecks people. Most of you do not have an income problem. You have a normal life problem. Same city, same year, same starting salary. $64,000 at age 28. Same vague promise to themselves, I'll get serious about money soon. That is the part people hate hearing. Your financial life usually doesn't collapse in one dramatic moment. It gets shaved down in tiny, polite, socially approved slices. You've probably been taught the flattering version of the story. Work hard, earn more, learn a little about money. Maybe watch a few videos, read a book, follow some smart people online, and eventually the pieces click. Sounds nice. Look at a guy like Derek. Derek makes $67,000, totally respectable. He is not lighting money on fire in the driveway. He has got 3 streaming services because each one has just a few things he likes. That is what most people do. They don't make a catastrophic decision. They stop looking. And once you stop looking, the system takes over. Americans think they spend about $95 a month on subscriptions. The actual average is $245. Read that again. There is an entire field built around this. Friction design. Making the sign-up button obvious, bright, easy. One-click face scan, done in seconds. Then hiding cancellation in a maze of menus. Confirmation screens, are you sure prompts, and fake sympathy. You are not uniquely weak, you are the target. That monthly charge sliding out of your account at 2:13 a.m. is T-random. And it is not just subscriptions. The same thing happens with shopping. The average person impulse buys about $3,800 a year. And most of those purchases end in regret. Not because people are idiots. The time between seeing a thing and buying a thing used to be longer. You'd notice something, think about it, maybe leave the store, maybe forget. Now the average window between discovery and purchase can get crushed to about 90 seconds. That is the business model. So when you tell yourself, I just need better willpower, no, not really. You're trying to fight a system that has teams of engineers, behavioral researchers, interface designers, and a $6.2 billion influencer marketing machine, all focused on shortening the distance between your impulse and your credit card. That little tap to buy button is not convenience in some neutral sense. And the ugliest part is how invisible the damage feels while it is happening. Nobody gets a push notification saying this month's convenience cost you one more month of being trapped. Nobody sees 3 streaming services, a fitness app, unused subscriptions, delivery fees, installment payments, and emotionally translates that into, this is why I still feel behind at 33. But that is exactly what is happening. So before you start fantasizing about side hustles, stock picks, or some magical income jump that will save everything, you need to let one painful idea land. A lot of your effort has been built on a false premise. You thought wealth was mostly about making more. For most people, the first break in the chain comes earlier than that. It comes when they stop confusing familiar behavior with harmless behavior. The money drain isn't dramatic, it is ambient. Let's stop pretending these are tiny lifestyle choices. They are arithmetic, cold, boring, embarrassing arithmetic. You say, it is just lunch, it is just one purchase. It is just easier to split the payment. Okay? Start with the trap nobody respects because it looks too small to matter. A random purchase you didn't plan. The data says 79% of Americans have bought something they never even used. Not rarely, not by accident, regularly. And that surge you feel in the moment, that fake urgency. Spoiler alert, it is not need. It is a dopamine spike with a half-life of about 4 hours. Which means the version of you swearing this item will improve your life is chemically different from the version of you staring at it the next morning, wondering why it is on your credit card. Put a 24-hour gap between wanting and buying, and you're not saving some cute little amount. Then there is the move that sounds almost insulting in its simplicity. One no-spend day per week. People hear that and think it is symbolic. It isn't. Average daily non-essential spending sits around $40 to $60. One day a week, 52 times a year, means you keep $2,080 to $3,120. Instead of leaking it out through snacks, delivery fees, quick errands, coffee runs, and whatever else quietly disappears from your statement. That is not discipline theater. That is a line item with a body count. And the part most people miss is the behavioral effect. At first, a no-spend day feels weird, almost itchy. Now let's make it uglier. Buy now, pay later. The financial industry keeps wrapping debt in soft language because deferred payment frictionless convenience solution sounds friendlier than you are financing nonsense. But users of these split payment tools spend 6.4% more per transaction than people who pay in full. Of course they do. Once the full price is hidden, your brain relaxes and your wallet bleeds. And those same users hold about $14,500 less in non-retirement savings, less saved, not because they earned dramatically less, but because they normalized slicing depreciating purchases into polite little monthly chunks. If you can't pay in full right now, you can't afford it right now. And if that still feels abstract, here is Derek. He didn't get a raise. He didn't launch a side hustle at 5 a.m. He didn't discover a secret ETF or start flipping furniture on weekends. He simply stopped being such an easy target for convenience spending and payment gimmicks. Result, he freed up $5,000 to $9,000 a year. Same life, same person, same earning power, different leaks. Now zoom in on the humble packed lunch. Maybe the least glamorous wealth-building act on earth. Bought lunch averages $14 to $18. Packed lunch costs about $3 to $6. 5 workdays a week, and you are looking at nearly $3,000 a year. Staying in your pocket instead of walking out in takeout bags and plastic forks. Invest that at 8% for 10 years and it turns into $44,000. Yes, $44,000 from leftovers in a container. From not turning every midday meal into a minor financial event. The reason people don't like this one has almost nothing to do with food. It is entirely about your perceived status. Restaurants make the same point, just louder. The average household spends $950 a month eating out and $667 on groceries. That alone should set off alarms. More money spent on food prepared by strangers than food in your own kitchen. A home-cooked meal costs roughly $4 to $5 per serving. A restaurant meal runs $13 to $20. Delivery is about 5 times more expensive than cooking at home. Replace 5 restaurant meals a week with home cooking, and you save about $3,200 to $3,800 a year. That is not deprivation. That is paying yourself thousands of dollars to use your stove. And then there is the simplest habit of all. The one people avoid because it removes plausible deniability. You just need to look at your spending. Not create a beautiful budget spreadsheet you'll abandon by Thursday. You just need to look. People who review their spending weekly are 30% more likely to save. Over 10% of their income than people who only check quarterly. Among people who never check, only 10% save more than 10%. Among daily checkers, it is well above 50%. That gap is insane, and it tells you something important. You do not need more motivation. Quotes. You need visual contact with your own behavior. And that is how someone like Marcus walks into a dealership. and feels proud of getting the monthly payment down to $880 on a 7-year loan for a $58,000 truck. He feels smart because the game focuses on the monthly number. It completely ignores the total extraction. The dealership complimented his negotiating naturally. Take the new truck fantasy. Not because trucks are evil, but because the machine around them is incredibly efficient. In year 1 alone, a new car loses 20 to 30% of its value. That is just the public part. The private part, the part nobody says out loud, while you're nodding in the showroom under fluorescent lights, is that the dealership often isn't really excited about selling you the vehicle. It is excited about selling you the loan. So Marcus signs for 7 years. Yes, 7. Over that stretch, he sends out $66,360 in payments for something that may be worth around $18,000 by the end. Read that again slowly. He didn't purchase durable value. He rented a feeling, then financed the decay. When the balance is still hanging there, the usual move is to trade it in, roll what is left into the next loan, and start the treadmill again. With a fresh air freshener and a bigger screen on the dashboard. Nearly 3 in 10 buyers do exactly that, beginning the next loan already underwater. And the quiet insult is that the useful alternative is embarrassingly boring. A reliable car that is 3 to 5 years old, driven until the doors sound tired and the cup holder has seen things. A 2021 Honda Civic and a 2026 Honda Civic do not belong to different civilizations. One of them just let somebody else absorb roughly $14,000 of depreciation for you. There is no dramatic reveal. No one turns around to admire your restraint. But the money stays in your system instead of leaking into theirs. That difference is not cosmetic. It doesn't stop with cars. Major purchases are where status reaches into your wallet. Wearing a perfectly reasonable face. Average new car around $49,000. Comparable used vehicle around $32,000. That is about $16,000 gone on day 1 for basically identical function. Used furniture can cost 50 to 80% less. Same couch category, same table category, same practical purpose. The expensive part is not the object. The expensive part is your ego reacting to the idea that someone else touched it first. Then there is the lower level trap that looks harmless, because it comes wrapped in convenience. Financing stuff that drops in value the second it enters your home. A sofa on a 0% promotional plan sounds clever, right up until you remember the rate only stays at 0%. If you behave perfectly inside a time window designed around average human sloppiness. 12 months pass, life happens, the balance survives. Then the rate snaps to 29.99%, often retroactively. And suddenly, you're paying luxury pricing on a used couch, with a dent in the cushion where you doom-scrolled every night. The lender isn't shocked by this outcome. The lender built the offer because this outcome is common. This is the actual dividing line most people miss. Poorer financial behavior is not always visible as chaos. Sometimes it looks tidy, a nice driveway, matching furniture, smooth monthly payments, reward points, promotional financing, a salary that sounds impressive at dinner. Meanwhile, half of people making over $100,000 still report living paycheck to paycheck. Even among workers earning $300,000 to $500,000, 41% say the same. And on the other side, 1/3 of American millionaires never earn 6 figures in a single working year. Not once, and that should bother you, because it means the game is not sorted by who looked rich the fastest. It is sorted by who kept ownership. Income creates capacity, behavior decides custody. Look at Sarah. She gets a $12,000 raise and ends up with only $400 more in savings than before. That missing $11,600 didn't vanish. It got claimed quietly, bit by bit. Better dinners, easier clicks, higher defaults. Little comforts that became baseline in less than 6 months. That is what happens when new income arrives before new rules do. So when people say they work hard and deserve nice things. Okay, sure, but understand what that sentence translates to in practice. I generate the income, and other balance sheets end up owning the benefit. The dealership owns the spread, the lender owns the interest. The card company owns the impulse, the retailer owns the markup. You keep the stress, the maintenance, and the obligation to keep earning at the same speed, so none of it falls over. That is the hierarchy hiding underneath the culture of treating yourself. Some people buy assets, eventually. Some people spend their prime earning years stabilizing liabilities that looked normal. Same economy, same broad access to products, but not the same relationship to ownership. One household keeps sending cash into things that depreciate, expire, or reset. The other learns to feel slightly embarrassed in the short term and materially safer in the long term. The trap is that none of this feels expensive while you're doing it. It feels harmless. It feels normal. A little cash back here, a you deserve it purchase there. A bill you never questioned because, who has the energy to spend lunch arguing with an internet provider? But look at the math coldly and it gets embarrassing fast. If a household runs $30,000 a year through cards and overspends by 15% just to keep the points machine humming, that is $4,500 of extra spending to maybe collect $450 back. Congratulations, you paid $10 to get one. That is not optimization. That is bait with a rewards logo on it. So stop trying to outsmart the system with clever categories and start using friction in your favor. Once a year, same month, same chair, same boring ritual. Open your bills, call the providers, and ask one sentence. What promotions or retention discounts are available on this account? That is it. No genius required, no spreadsheet poetry. Just 3 awkward phone calls that can save roughly $1,650. If you hit cable, internet, and phone. Most people don't do it because it feels small. Small is exactly why it works. And while we're here, let's kill another expensive lie. I can afford this place is not the same sentence as saying, this place is helping me build wealth. Housing is the heavyweight champion of your expenses. It doesn't need to be dramatic to be dangerous. One nicer building, one better zip code, one upgraded kitchen. One I work hard. I want to enjoy my home justification. And suddenly, the largest line item in your life is quietly eating the future version of you. The boring move is to live just a little beneath what your income says. You could swing, not in misery, not in deprivation cosplay, just to slightly cheaper than your ego prefers. Because the gap between 35% and 25% of income spent on housing doesn't feel life-changing on a random Tuesday. But over decades it becomes the difference between still negotiating with every emergency in your 50s and not having to. The apartment is smaller, the freedom is bigger, that is the trade. Then, there is the purchase that shows up right after a brutal week. You know the one Friday night, you're fried. Your brain wants relief, and somehow relief now has a checkout button. New shoes delivery again, random home stuff you didn't know existed. Until the algorithm diagnosed your emotional weakness in under 8 seconds. People call it self-care because I use shopping to sedate myself, sounds less cute. But if spending is your main recovery tool, you've basically signed up for a recurring charge to stay emotionally functional. It doesn't solve the week, it just invoices the next one. So here is the mechanical fix. Create a 24-hour delay rule. On any non-essential purchase over a number you can't ignore. Pick $50, pick $75, whatever stings just enough to matter. Put it in the cart, leave it there. If you still want it tomorrow, fine, at least you bought it awake. What you're interrupting is not spending. You're interrupting the identity loop, where stress automatically turns into consumption. Now for the easiest money you will ever make, which is also somehow the money people casually walk past every year. If your employer offers a 401k match, and you are not contributing enough to get the full match, you are declining part of your pay because the form was boring. That is the whole story. If the match is 50 cents on the dollar, up to 6%, and you're below 6%, fix it before you optimize one more thing. Not next quarter, not after you look into investing. Today. Log in, raise the contribution to capture the full match. Save it, and close the tab. That one move is not sexy, but it is a guaranteed return ordinary people almost never get anywhere else. People will spend 3 hours comparing travel cards to earn a free airport sandwich, and ignore money their employer is literally trying to hand them. Insane. Because income, spoiler alert, is not wealth. Plenty of people make impressive money and stay financially fragile the entire time. The people who actually build something solid usually look boring from the outside. In one study of 10,000 actual millionaires, most didn't inherit anything. Most didn't live on revolving credit. A huge chunk never even hit 6 figures in a single year. Read that again if you need to. They were not winning because they earned the most. They were winning because they kept a gap between what came in and what went out, and then protected that gap long enough for time to become the heavy lifter. That is why this whole thing feels almost insulting in its simplicity. Paid-off car housing below the ceiling of what you technically qualify for. Food cooked at home more often than not. Subscriptions cut before they turn invisible. Emotional spending noticed before it turns into a personality trait. Employer match taken instead of ignored like free money is somehow beneath you. Add up enough of those dull, unsexy moves, and you're not talking about pocket change anymore. You're talking about recovering something like $22,000 to $38,000 a year. Split the middle at $30,000. Invest it at 8%. And suddenly, the story changes fast. Over $100,000 in a little more than 3 years. Around $362,000 in 10. Roughly $1.1 million in 20. And about $3.3 million in 30. No raise required, no side hustle cosplay. No genius stock picking arc, just less leaking. And yes, socially, this is almost invisible. The new truck gets attention. The paid-off Civic does not. The person ordering delivery every night looks like they're enjoying life. The person maxing the match and canceling 2 subscriptions looks forgettable. Fine, let them be forgettable. Because at 45, one of those people checks a portfolio on a random Tuesday morning and realizes work is now a choice, not a hostage situation. That is a completely different category of freedom. It is not about never working again. It is about never being cornered again. If you think that sounds too slow, look at what slow actually does. Ronald Read pumped gas for 25 years. Then cleaned floors at JCPenney for another decade. He drove a used Toyota Yaris, parked 2 blocks away to avoid the meter. Wore a coat held together with safety pins, and invested around $75 a month into boring dividend stocks. That he reinvested and left alone. A stranger once bought his breakfast because they assumed he needed help. He let them think that. When he died at 92, he left $8 million to his community. Not because he hacked the system, because he refused to perform wealth while he was building it. So, let's end where this actually matters. I'm not promising you some cinematic transformation. I'm not promising millionaire status on your preferred timeline. I'm not promising that one spreadsheet fixes inflation, layoffs, medical bills, divorce, or plain bad luck. That is the promise at the end of all this boring stuff. Not overnight wealth, but a wider exit door. Not flexing, but options. Not certainty, but resilience. The first $100,000 is brutally hard, because you are still pushing the snowball yourself. After that, it starts helping you back.